All right. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. I am delighted to be here with you today, and we are going live from Traverse City, Michigan. All right. So, really excited to be in the city of Traverse City. It's awesome here for any of you that are familiar with the Midwest. And I am joined by Mr. Greg Ault today. And guys, this is a topic that I think you are going to love. I'm so excited to have an opportunity to talk with Greg. We're going to talk some numbers today, right, Greg?
Yes, we
We're
are.
gonna, we are going to delve into a few things that I think are really going to help. And specifically, we're going to zero in on some really, really common bookkeeping mistakes that really could be holding you back. So, Greg Ault is from Paramount Bookkeeping Services, and he is going to talk to us today about the 5 mistakes that business owners make and really how you can avoid them. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you even a kind of a deeper dive overview in terms of specifically what you're going to learn today. So, we are going to talk about the hidden benefits of having a good bookkeeper or advisor. And, guys, I can't recommend this enough. It is really so very important, right? Like we all need to kind of stay in our zone of genius, right? For the most part. So we're going to talk about the benefits of having a good bookkeeper or advisor and how to know if a bookkeeper is actually qualified to help you in this area, when to do it yourself and when to turn it over to a pro, and why a bookkeeper can help you to make really good strategic business decisions, and of course, much more. So, with that little bit of background, I want to formally welcome Greg. Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Leslie.
Good. I'm so excited to talk to you. So, Greg comes highly recommended from one of my longtime clients in Texas, right? So, Greg, where are you dialing in from?
So I'm dialing in from Houston, Texas
Okay.
today.
All right. Houston, Texas. It's been a long time, but I've been to Houston. We had an academy meeting in Houston maybe 5 years ago or so. So awesome, awesome city. Love it there.
It's a
And
great place to live. It's a great place to be a business owner as well.
yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet there's a lot going on, a lot of growth in your
Yes,
state. Tons and tons of growth from what I hear.
absolutely.
So, all right, well, good. I'm really looking forward to delving into our topic today. Before we dig in, roll up our sleeves and dig in, though, tell us a little bit about your journey. Are you from Houston? Where, kind of like a little bit of the backstory. Where are you
So
from?
I'm
How did
I'm
you?
originally from I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay,
Was born there, left at a young age, spent a little bit of time in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta, for
okay.
about 4 years, and then came to Houston in 1980. So really,
Oh,
I really am should be saying that almost a native
yeah.
Houstonian since I've been here that long. Um, Obviously grew up here and stuff. Went to Texas A&M. Started my corporate career with a national crane company, um, and got moved around a little bit with them, and then ended up working for a couple other businesses and another heavy equipment rental company and a manufacturing company. So after those 25 years in the corporate world, 6 years ago, last month actually, I opened Paramount Bookkeeping. I
Okay.
saw a need that could fill a gap that a lot of business owners weren't getting from what was available to them, and decided to start my own business and become an entrepreneur.
So interesting. So what did you do in the corporate world before you transitioned into becoming an entrepreneur
I
yourself?
was mainly in a controller role for a region or for the whole business, and ultimately was the chief financial officer for a manufacturing company here in
Okay.
Houston.
Okay. So a lot of background dealing with money,
Yes,
clearly.
yes, yes, yes.
All right. That's awesome. All right. So let's jump into some of the content that we want to cover today for our audience. And by the way, welcome. Before we do that, I would love to know who's here with us today. Who is here? Say hello in the chat. And the other thing I'd love to find out is, do you have a bookkeeper? Do you have a CPA? How do you manage your finances? Just if you could give us a little bit of background info, that would be super helpful. And then, of course, we can gear our conversation in, we can kind of steer it in places that will be most helpful. And hello, I don't know. Unfortunately, unless you click that little link that's provided in the event, right? Facebook does not allow me to see who you are. So hello. And so it looks like we've got a couple people here that, okay, let's see. So, so someone says, no, I don't. I need one badly. So this is a perfect topic for you. And then again, another visitor today. I don't know. It just says Facebook user. Sorry, guys. I do mine in Excel. Honestly, I got to be really transparent here. I did it in Excel for a really, really long time. I did have a CPA that, did my taxes, but in terms of the bookkeeping part, up until I think about 2, maybe 3 years ago, I did the bookkeeping part myself in a spreadsheet. Yeah, it was a lot. And it was not ideal, let me tell you. Let me just say, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah, that's a good way to make mistakes.
Yep. And it was just so time consuming. And I would just have this feeling of dread, like the end of the year when I knew, we always like to get our taxes in pretty, on time / early. Oh my God, just to sit down and go through all my expenses and try to figure out what's what. It just was so overwhelming. Okay, so let's see here. All right. Hey, Lynn. Okay, so perfect timing, Lynn. Just starting private practice. And so no bookkeeper yet. Perfect timing. Oh, yeah. And, that's another thing that we'll probably want to touch on, Greg, is kind of this sense of avoidance, right? Because in all honesty, I've heard this from clients before. This whole concept of money management, I've noticed, can really conjure up a lot of feelings around, feelings of shame, quite frankly, right? Because I don't know what that is, but it's definitely common. So we will want to touch on that. Hey, Patty from Houston. All right. So you got a neighbor here, Greg.
Yeah, looks like it.
And then hello from Complete Health for Women, just starting out using Wave since it's free for now until I can afford a bookkeeper. Awesome. Okay, great. So yeah, as you jump on today, I'd love to know, who we have visiting, who join in on the conversation, and just kind of let me know where things are in terms of your own bookkeeping. Hey, Bonnie, how are you? So Bonnie is on the East Coast, and she uses an accounting company and QuickBooks for bookkeeping and payroll. Awesome. All right, that's super, super helpful, guys. All right, so let's jump into some of our content today, shall we, Greg? So the first question I have for you is, what is professional bookkeeping? Just kind of give us an overview of, what that is, what that entails, and why it matters.
So I take a different approach to what I consider professional bookkeeping. I obviously it is posting transactions. It's posting your credit card transactions, your bank transactions, but it's also producing financial statements for business owners. Yeah. And I feel like and what I do with my clients is I ask them questions about what's happening with what I'm seeing in the numbers of the business. What if they have an expense that has increased over the last 2 months? It's why are you doing this? What's happening and causing this expense increase? Because it's cutting into your margin and cutting into the money that you're trying to make. And so we kind of, it's a back and forth conversation so that they can learn how to read the financial statement, but
Yeah.
also understand what the impact of things have on that.
Okay. So yeah, I would say, based on my personal experience and, kind of my limited sphere of, what I myself have experienced, you doing financial statements is definitely above and beyond. Just want to point that out because I certainly do not think that that is the norm. So I think that's awesome. Oh, so what specifically do you tend to provide for your clients?
Oh, on a monthly basis, I provide my clients, I'll post all the transactions, or my team or myself will post all the transactions. We'll reconcile the bank and credit card accounts. We'll make sure everything gets posted into the right accounts, and they're not posted in, misclassified.
Okay.
And then they're provided with monthly financial statements, so they know how they're doing it. If they want to make 10%, 20% each month, they know if they're making that much. I have some clients where we have created a budget for the year, and we do a comparison each month on how or quarterly comparison, or how they're tracking from budgeted to actual. So it varies from client to client, but at the minimum, every client is getting a financial statement on a monthly basis if they're a monthly client. I do work some clients on a quarterly basis, so then they get those financial statements on a quarterly basis.
Okay. Amazing. That's so helpful. And just the fact that have that open communication with, okay, so I noticed this expense is really on the rise. Let's talk about that. Because obviously, yeah, we want to maintain, of course, we need to invest in our businesses, right? So to be
Yes.
clear, yeah, like smart investing intelligently inside of your business is so very important. Like we would all like to think, oh, we can just do it all ourselves and really like go bare bones. And I'm all about bootstrapping, but sometimes it's much better to really be the CEO in your business and delegate those tasks to other people that that maybe are not in your zone of genius, right? Things that take
Correct.
too much time, things that maybe you're not that great at. You guys should really be highly focused on revenue generating activities, the things that really only you can do inside of your business, right? Would you agree with that, Greg?
I agree with that 100%. You started your business to do X. That's your expertise.
Right.
And the things that are not your expertise, the things that you would do, might do the books at night at home. You might be distracted. You're not spending the time you want with your family, with your spouse or your children. That all takes its toll. And
Yeah.
I help try to take that pressure and that stress away from business owners.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And in my experience working with practitioners and kind of coaching them around such topics, the burnout levels really, really high. And quite often, when we peel back the layers and really look at what's going on, I would say burnout is extraordinarily high in practices where there's not much delegating, right? Where we are trying to do everything ourselves. And so, yeah, if you're feeling yourself, like those of you on the line today, if you're listening, if you're just like, oh man, this is just really starting to feel like it's too much, I would probably start by looking at where are you spending your time, really being honest with yourself in terms of what you're doing, and look for opportunities to delegate some tasks that can really be done effectively and maybe even better by someone else, right? Such as bookkeeping. Unless you love numbers, you just love this kind of this really detail oriented work, it really could be an amazing place to start delegating in your practice. So, okay, so let's zero in a little bit, Greg, on some of the common bookkeeping mistakes that entrepreneurs tend to make. What would you say?
Um, some of I think the biggest one is that they are failing to track expenses. They might, especially when they're starting out, they might not have all the capital, so they start spending a little bit, a couple of things here they'll put on a personal card, and then they'll process a couple of things through the business account. And, you go 6 months, a year later, and they're trying to get all their expenses together to do their taxes. And they don't realize that they did those transactions in their personal account, 6 months ago, 12 months ago. And they need to make sure that they capture all that, because they could be ultimately that leads to paying more in taxes, especially if they had a profitable year and all their expenses weren't recorded.
Yeah, such a good point. So, what I am hearing is the first thing is keep things separate, right?
Yes,
Keep
yes,
things
yes.
separate, like from the get go. Get a separate bank account, get a special or separate credit card that you only use for business expenses, and really be cognizant of not mixing things in. Um, because I think that can lead to a lot of confusion and just what Greg said, missing legitimate business expenses because they were put through maybe inadvertently in a personal account, right?
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so that is yeah a really important mistake that we definitely want to try to avoid. Okay, what else?
So one of the other biggest things is that I find and see is that they are misclassifying employees, the status of employees.
Oh,
When I What I mean by that is that you can have independent. There's a test for what is considered an independent contractor and an employee.
mm,
And a lot of times, smaller businesses don't want to start that payroll process for an employee, so they call them a contractor
yeah.
when they're really not a contractor. And if they're guiding, basically, if they're guiding that person's work and telling them what they're to do each day, that is really an employee, and they need to be paying them under payroll.
Oh, okay. Now, would this be something like if you're working with a CPA? Is this like, would you say this is in their breadth of knowledge or not so much?
And CPAs would know this. This is
Okay.
something that CPAs would know as well.
Okay. Is there anything that you can, because this is a really, really important question, especially as we're talking about delegating, right? um, so, can you give us a little more, shed a little more light on that distinction? And I mean, you
So if
said,
you
yeah, go ahead.
so basically it's you can give them a list of tasks to complete,
Yeah.
but you don't tell them how to do those tasks. And they, here's I need these 5 things done. I'm
Okay.
not telling you how to do them. Basically,
Let's see.
um, it's kind of this is the way I try to explain it. You're not telling them that they need to, dot the I here, cross the T here. You
Uh-huh.
just kind of say, here's this piece of paper. I want you to do this stuff, take care of it, and bring me the end product.
Okay.
But more of an employee is you're assigning them their tasks and how to do their tasks and in what order to do their tasks. An independent
Oh,
contractor would be more like if you were having a marketing person come in and
mhm.
do create your website, and
Right.
marketing would be an independent contractor. But if you had somebody doing administrative duties for you in the business, is more of an employee.
Okay. So it's not number of hours. It's
No.
okay. That is super interesting. I don't think I realized that. So the distinction is not so much, okay, you've crossed this threshold of number of hours. It's more around, am I as a business owner really handholding that contractor, right? In many cases, that's what we assume the person is. Like, and to what extent, right? Okay. So if I'm the business owner and I'm, have a contractor, and if I am like telling that person, okay, here's how you do the task, here's the order of the task that I want you to do in a day, and really giving them a lot of explicit instruction, then it sounds like that leans more towards becoming, would you say, an employee?
That's more leaning towards as an employee,
Okay.
it's a better classification and the better way of doing,
Okay.
having them as an employee.
Okay. So, and who is it better for? Is it better for the business owner too?
It's better. It can have it. It's, a lot of businesses, especially if they're new, they're struggling with cash, and that means
Yeah.
it's an extra expense. But it's, at the end of the day, it's the classification that the IRS looks at. I'm not a CPA. I don't do taxes, so I'm not giving
Yep.
any tax advice or
Right.
anything. But ultimately, there's really been kind of an abuse of contractors,
Okay.
and they are looking at that more and more to ensure that what that classification is.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. So it's super interesting. So, do you find that varies like state by state? Are there more, I guess I'm just wanting to give my audience a jumping off point.
It probably varies. I work mainly in Texas. A lot of my clients that work in other states, they're solopreneurs.
Right.
They really don't have anybody that they're. So I haven't had to look at that classification. But it's that classification kind of sticks in Texas, and I'm sure it's that same way everywhere else.
Interesting. Okay. Super, super fascinating. I learn something new every day, right? Definitely. I did not know that in terms of the, the classification of an employee versus a contractor. So fascinating. Okay. So I think we've covered what, 2 mistakes so far, right?
Yes.
Okay. What else do you have? I think we've got 5 total.
Correct. Another one is, I just said it again. I'm not a CPA. I'm not giving tax advice, but ultimately, the mistakes that they make can lead to tax mistakes on their tax returns. Because if they produce financial statements for their CPA or tax advisor, that's going to ultimately lead to mistakes down the line for them in their taxes.
Okay. All right. So, so errors on their actual taxes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. What's number 4?
Another one is mismanaging cash and not necessarily getting it captured correctly.
Okay.
Sometimes, if they get a cash payment, they might deposit that in their personal account, and then that doesn't get recorded correctly.
Oh, okay.
Or they are just misclassifying what's actually revenue and what might be a reimbursement, or a different ways of handling cash, and not really thinking about how that impacts their financial statements.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Maybe give us an example.
Use it, like, say if they're in maybe, and I'm going to use this as an example, they're in a more retail location.
Okay.
They are receiving cash payments for their goods that they're selling.
Mhm.
And then they have service trucks, and they're giving their employees the cash to pay for gas to fill those trucks.
Okay.
But it's not being recorded in the books generally properly. And so we need to make sure that especially when it's a smaller business,
Okay.
they don't realize that needs to be accounted for on the revenue side and the expense side correctly.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, and I can see how it would, because with cash, it's not like you've got like a paper trail, right?
Yeah.
So it just would be much easier to make errors there. including incoming cash, right? And especially if you put it in a different account, which kind of goes back to the first thing we talked about, or one of the first things, which is keep things separate, keep things completely separate in terms of your account, so that at least you can be confident that all your transactions are occurring amongst your business accounts versus kind of mixing things in with personal, because boy, that gets really confusing at the end of the year, trying to do like your reconciliations, and it's just a mess if you have to start looking at all of your personal transactions in addition to your business transactions. That just that leads
and you hit on the last one that's pretty key, is that they're not reconciling their bank and credit card accounts on a regular basis. Because if they're working in, and I'm going to use your example from the beginning, that you started out working in Excel. If you're not reconciling that to the bank account, you could have missing transactions, which ultimately leads to tax mistakes and not tracking all the expenses.
Okay.
By reconciling, and you keep everything in the business accounts, you reconcile them on a regular basis, you know that you're capturing all of the transactions that need to be captured.
Okay. Yeah. Do you recommend that people use software?
I do. And there's several softwares out there. Coming from an accounting background and ease of use from an accounting standpoint, I would recommend QuickBooks Online for my clients.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, it seems like that's what most people use. That's definitely what I use. And it was a little bit of a learning curve though, right?
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's like any software. It's a little bit of a learning curve.
I'll tell you, okay, so full transparency, where I kind of struggled, let's see if I can explain this. So where I personally kind of had a hard time when I first started was, so it was like double transactions. I'm going to see if this makes sense. Like, so let's say we run things through PayPal. All right, actually I have a better example. So let's say that I buy a course through PayPal to help me run my business, right? So I pay for a course on PayPal, but let's say through PayPal, I use my credit card, my Amex, right? So like if I looked at them kind of independently, I could double count that expense. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, okay, I've got a PayPal and I've got American Express. That's the challenge I personally had, was kind of figuring, well, like, how do I avoid double counting things, right? And it was really, I found that, I don't know, am I alone on that? I found that
you're not alone on that. I've seen that. It's I've had several clients who use PayPal, and it's linked to their business credit card or their business checking account as well, and it can look like it's double transactions, because you got it going out here and you got it going out here, and you're not sure how that happens. But I help make it easy and I fixed that on cleanups and that for several clients.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's like, when you realize, it's like, oh wait, like my expenses are like a third less based on that one. I mean, that's a huge margin of error, right?
Yes.
When you, like, I guess depending on how much you buy on PayPal and things like that, but can be pretty significant. So so there is a learning curve for sure, and but it's still like, once you get up and running with software and kind of work through and tweak some of those challenges, it just can make things so much easier. So let's talk a little bit then. So we covered the 5 mistakes. Is there anything you'd like to add, or do you want to just kind of do a quick summary, just for people that maybe have just
joined sure. No, so basically the biggest mistakes that I see when I start working with clients is that they're failing to track their expenses.
Okay.
They have potentially, if they have employees or contractors, sometimes they've misclassified those employees. Um, they are have because of them, they're not tracking all their expenses and revenue and stuff. They're mismanaging cash, and which ultimately causes tax mistakes, and they're not reconciling their accounts on a regular basis.
Okay. Yep. All definitely critical mistakes that can really mess things up.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, when our practitioners and, business owners that are here today, and those of you listening to the recording. So when in general should a business owner consider hiring someone, perhaps such as yourself, bookkeeping services to help them keep on track? When's a good time other
I
than
really,
yesterday, right?
yeah. No, I mean, I know money is always tight when you're starting
Yeah.
off at first, and when you're small and you're just starting off, if you're feeling comfortable with what information you and how you're doing it, um, it's good. It's probably good to bring somebody an account, like bring in somebody like me at the beginning of a year, and have them look at the previous year, make sure everything was done right before you go and submit that stuff to have your taxes prepared.
Okay.
And generally, I think depending on the type of industry, when they start in that $30,000 to $40,000 a year in revenue, they're having more transactions, and they're stressing about it, and they don't, on a monthly basis, they're not able to pull up a financial statement and see how much money they made in that month,
Right.
and what their expenses were, and they're struggling to do it themselves. They're doing it at night. They're pushing it off because they dread doing it. If they're using QuickBooks, they open QuickBooks, they see that they have 30 or 40 transactions. They don't know what to do with them. They're stressed out about it, basically.
Yeah.
And my key thing is that you don't know. You think you're not making money, but you don't. You can't confirm and know that you're making money.
Okay.
And when you at that point, it's good to bring somebody in.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I would just say, like, many people that I talk to are not able to answer the question, how much money did you make this month? How much money have you made so far this year? How many, tell me a little bit about your expenses, right? Like, so I think what you're saying is this should be like pretty much top of mind
yeah,
on a
they should know
monthly
on a
basis.
monthly basis how they're doing, because in 3 months, whether they could be busy rocking and rolling and they think they're making money, they might be working on stuff that they got that cash for 3 months ago, but they've not had any cash come in for 2 months. But they're
Okay.
super busy, and they're doing a coaching. I'm going to use coaching as an
Yep.
example. They've got a bunch of clients. They're on a 6 week or 8 week program,
Yeah.
and they got all that money up front, but they're not having any new clients come in those other 2 months. But they're super busy, and they think they're making money because they're busy and they've got money coming in, but really all that money's gone in 3 months ago. And oh, wait a minute, I've got to get back on sales. I need to focus on that part of it, and it kind of turns into a cycle.
I got to tell you, Greg, that's a phenomenal example. Can anyone relate? Right? Like, because I think the nature of many of these businesses do tend to be cyclical. And I think you nailed it when you said, describe that scenario of, being super busy. You're busy providing the service, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, where's the cash flow? Got to pay my bills, right? And so then we kind of are scrambling to generate sales, right? Instead of it being like a nice steady, right? Like, okay, we're really, ideally focused on both, right? Delivering the service, but also looking to increase the cash flow in the sales, right? It's really kind of yeah, they need to go together, guys. I think that's really it's such a great point. That's just imperative. You got to keep your eye on the ball in both places, which I know can be challenging, but at the same time, it's critical, right? Any other thoughts that you want to share on that?
Yeah, and it's not only keeping an eye on sales, cash flow, but it's also keeping an eye on your expenses, especially if you have employees that are doing some spending, and their hours and the time they spend, because those costs can add up quickly and
Yeah,
really eat into what money you're making as a business owner, because we really start our own businesses to make money.
yeah.
And if we're not making money, you can only support that for so long.
Oh, yeah. Before things go south, right?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, that brings up such a good point. So like, let's just say hypothetically, like, okay, so we're in the summer months and in the world of health, I don't want to say always because I have lots and lots of clients that get super crazy busy this time of year. At the same time, I feel like there's other niches that maybe are maybe a little bit less active in the summer, let's just say, right? When it comes to investing in themselves. So how does one juggle that? It's what I'm taking away is that it's really by keeping an eye like on your P&L, right? On a monthly
Mm-hmm.
basis, P&L, profit and loss, right?
Loss.
And then, okay, so if you've got employees or contract, whatever it is, that expense, and you're noticing things, maybe kind of leveling out, even if it's temporarily in the summertime, what do you do? Do you just say, okay, we got to pull back on, like, what do you usually recommend?
I usually recommend that clients, if they're able to keep at least 3 months of expenses in a bank account. A lot of times business owners are they have their own payroll and they handle their own expenses and stuff, but
Yeah,
you really got to look at, all right, look ahead. You got to it's two things in accounting. You have to look back, but you also have to look forward.
yeah,
And, seeing how you did is your actuals and your profit and loss, your financial statements, but
yeah.
you have to look ahead and make sure that you have the cash to cover those expenses if your sales decrease for those summer months. And so I think having a budget is a good plan for especially for smaller businesses.
Okay.
Do have a budget and look to see, kind of review that on a quarterly basis, how you did from budgeting to actual. So I
Okay.
think that's something that a lot of business owners should look to do.
I love that. And then do you have kind of any tips or a rule of thumb in terms of, like X percent goes towards reinvesting in the business, X percent goes in the bank, X, you know what I mean? Like any kind of rules of thumb when it comes
Um,
to managing the
I
money?
don't really have any rules of thumb. It just depends on the business and what they're trying to
Got it.
accomplish
Okay.
and what their goals are. You have some clients who say, "No, I do this personally, and so I'm leaving the 3 months in there, and that's it,
Yeah.
or less." And some clients, it's less, but they have other things that they might have in their personal investing or whatever that might be.
Okay.
Um, and so, it's different for each business.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Um, all right. So we talked about when a business owner should seek out a professional bookkeeper. I think everyone's clear on that. And I would just summarize by saying probably sooner rather than later and before things get too hairy, which is a little
Yeah,
ridiculous,
yes.
I know, but that's my professional advice before things get too hairy. Um, and then what advice would you like to share, or do you have with someone, kind of dipping their toe? Because we had a couple people early in our conversation mention that they're just starting out, right? Any advice for our newbies?
I My advice would be to at least get QuickBooks, and you could even get the basic version. It's not that expensive each month.
Okay.
But if you're seeing several, especially in your client base, Leslie, is track that income and expenses. Make sure that you keep everything in a business account, and make sure you're tracking those expenses, and you're looking at that on a regular basis.
Great. Great advice. Um, how, before I ask you how people can follow you, learn more about your services, is there any like final words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
If you're stressed out and you really don't know where you're sitting, it's time to talk to somebody,
Okay.
whether it's me or somebody else
Yeah.
that's knowledgeable of your industry.
Okay.
Go talk to them, because
Okay.
it really will take some stress away from you. And
Yeah.
that additional
that's not
stress
the
can cause
same,
burnout.
right? Like just like if you're feeling that kind of that burden. And again, it's really interesting because I do talk to clients that really kind of have that sense of shame around the whole topic of money. Yeah, I would definitely, we don't want you to feel that way, right?
Yeah.
If you're feeling
No,
stressed,
it's like
things.
and it's a judgment-free zone.
It really is. That's probably the most important thing to convey, is that those feelings are like they're burdening you. But honestly, every professional financial person I've ever talked to, like it is truly judgment free. So believe me, I'm sure you guys have seen it all, right?
Yes, I guess, yes. I
I
could spend hours talking about it.
That would be an interesting show in of itself, right? Um, okay. So, all right. So, how can people find out more about you and the services you provide? Anywhere we can recommend?
Probably one of the best places is going to be the website,
Okay.
which is paramountbookkeeping.net.
Okay.
And there's a contact page there. You can fill out a form to reach out and receive a link to schedule a meeting
Okay.
to discuss how we might be able to help you.
Awesome. So I am going to hang on, guys. I'm going to copy and paste that link so you guys have it. Let's see. Give me a second. All right. Paramount Bookkeeping.net, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct? Okay. Should I spell that right? I think I did. All right, guys. Okay. Is that right?
Yes.
Looks right. Bookkeeping.net. Awesome. All right, guys. ParamountBookkeeping.net. Yeah. I would give Greg a call, in all honesty. I think actually Greg is working with some of my clients.
I do.
Right.
I work with a couple of about 3 or 4 of your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, you know that I only send you the best people in the industry, right? All right. So give Greg a call, or go to his website, peruse around, fill out a contact form. If you'd like to jump on a call with him, I'm sure he'd be happy to do that. And just discover a little bit more about how we can help. Take that burden off your shoulders, right? And what the thing that I really, really like about, what I hear about your work, Greg, I love the idea that you go above and beyond and provide your clients with a P&L every month. Like, I will just say that is not normal. That is not normal. And I just think that's so fabulous, because that way you guys know exactly where you stand every single month, which is so very important. So as we start to wrap up, does anyone have any questions, anything else before we call it a day? This time has gone by so fast, as usual. But this one, I think, exceptionally fast. Really great information. Love what you said about the employee versus contractor. Like, that is super, super interesting. And frankly, I don't think I had a huge level of awareness around that distinction. So really appreciate that. Okay, so all right, sounds good. If you're listening to the recording and you have questions, please put them in the comments, and Greg and/or myself will circle back around and get those answered for you. And in the meantime, anything that you'd like to chat with Greg about, please reach out to him at paramountbookkeeping.net. And Lynn says, thanks. Lynn, I hope it was super helpful in terms of, moving you forward with this whole concept. Really super important to get the ball rolling before you get super stressed, right? Let's take that burden off your shoulders. And, and I mean, guys, let's just be honest. Like, I mean, I even have an MBA, right? So I'm like kind of numbers oriented, but to be really honest, accounting really is not my favorite thing, right? I mean, really my favorite thing is coaching and working, with my clients. And, I mean, let me just say, I could do it myself, but just because you can does not mean you should. That's my final word of advice. Just because we can does not always mean we should. And especially when it comes to this kind of thing, most people, you guys are really, really well trained in your expertise. You've got amazing training. You're awesome at what you do. And definitely not always super into fixating on the numbers and, all that stuff. So want to encourage you to get the support you need to, to delegate, right? Like, a big part of being a business owner and a CEO is learning to delegate. And I know that means letting go to a degree, right? Letting go and just kind of relinquishing that sense of control. But it really is a super smart business decision to be able to do that. So, all right. With that said, I want to thank Greg for spending time with us today. Really appreciate your insight and your words of wisdom. Those 5 mistakes, really, really key. And I hope you stay cool.
It's a little bit impossible right now.
Yeah, I think you're going to be spending a lot of time indoors in the air conditioning for now, right?
Yes.
In that smoldering heat. Before we click the live button, I was just saying how I'm up in Traverse City, and actually was even in about 45 minutes north up. Okay, so you got to use the Met, right? In Michigan. So I was way up here in the top of the pinky finger area. And honestly, it has been no more than 80 degrees here. Like, barely 80, really more like in the 70s. So yeah, a little bit different climate here. So
yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah, well, let me just say, in the wintertime, I'm jealous. So we're freezing to death and, can hardly navigate because of all the snow. So anyway, all right, guys, have an awesome rest of your day. I'm really glad that you spent your time with us today. Again, if you have questions, please give us your feedback, your comments, your questions. Put those in the comments. I'll be sure to circle back on those later. And thanks again to Greg. Hope you have a great day, an awesome weekend, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.